Chosen one. You didn't have to utter a single word to dismantle a narrative that was built to break you. The silence currently surrounding your name is deafening because somebody got super quiet after they were proven wrong about you and everyone noticed. You have moved from the subject of their gossip to the proof of their delusion. There was a time when you could feel your name moving through spaces you were not even present in. You know that feeling. You would walk into a gathering and something would shift. A conversation would stop half a second too late. Eyes would adjust. People would rearrange their expressions, and you knew without anyone saying a word to you directly that your name had arrived in that space before you did. Somebody had been there ahead of you, building a case, laying a foundation, planting a flag in the ground that said, "Let me tell you what I know about this person." Somebody had a trumpet, and every single time that trumpet blew, your name came out with it. Now here is what I need you to notice. This is the first thing most people miss when this happens to them. When the trumpet blows, everyone assumes the point is the noise. The point is not the noise. The point is the crowd. The trumpet was never really about you. The trumpet was about getting to the people in your life, your circle, your family, your colleagues, your community, anyone with influence, access or resources, before you could get to them yourself. The entire mission was to preload those people with a specific, carefully constructed version of your identity, a version that ends with you as the failure. Why would someone invest that kind of energy into doing that? Hold that question. The answer to it is the most important revelation in this entire message, and we are going to arrive at it. But first, let's be honest about what that trumpet actually produced. The announcements landed inside of you. People formed beliefs, opportunities dried up, relationships cooled, invitations stopped coming. People who should have been in your corner moved to the fence or moved past the fence entirely. The announcements did real damage, felt undeniable damage, the kind that sits in your chest when you are trying to sleep, the kind that quietly presses on you in the dark when there is nobody around to perform strength for. And this is precisely where the real message begins, not with the triumph, with the choice you made right in the middle of all that damage. You made a decision. Maybe it did not feel like a decision at the time. Maybe it felt more like exhaustion, like you were simply too tired to keep fighting on the surface. Maybe it felt like retreat, like pulling back because you were genuinely hurt. But what that decision actually was, what it turned out to be, was the most strategic, most powerful, most ultimately devastating move you could have possibly made. You went quiet. You went quiet, not defeated quiet, not broken quiet, but chosen one quiet. The kind of quiet that carries a plan inside of it. The kind of quiet that, if a person knows how to receive it, is actually the loudest statement being made anywhere in the vicinity. You stopped explaining yourself. You stopped defending yourself. You stopped trying to correct the narrative with your words. You looked at the available microphone and you walked away from it. And instead of going to the crowd with your version of events, you went somewhere else entirely. You went to work. Feel this, because this is the moment everything else in this message pivots on. While the announcer was gathering the crowd, blowing the trumpet, and building the case against you, you went underground. You went into the tunnel, not to hide, not to sulk, to prepare. You were studying the playbook while the announcer assumed you were falling apart. You were building while the announcer was certain you had stopped. You were quietly becoming something that had no category in the narrative being constructed about you. And the announcer had absolutely no idea, because the tunnel is not visible from the street, and someone too busy running with a trumpet never stops to notice when a person has moved somewhere completely out of sight. Here is what I need you to hold as we move forward. Everything the announcer declared you could not do, you were in that tunnel learning how to do. Every limitation broadcast to your crowd, you were dismantling it in private, one decision at a time, one day at a time, no audience, no validation, no applause, just you, the work, and a knowing so deep and so quiet that it did not need to announce itself. The field was always coming. You knew that. Even on the days when it did not feel real, some part of you knew. Now let me be honest about what that quiet season actually looked like from the inside, because it was not a clean cinematic sequence where everything clicks and confidence flows naturally. There were genuinely hard stretches where the doubt was not a whisper but a full, loud presence sitting right next to you while you worked. Stretches where the announcements played back in your mind, not because you were weak, but because you are human. On those days you did the work anyway. Not because certainty was carrying you, because something deeper than certainty was driving you forward. That is faith operating in real time. Faith does not require the absence of doubt. Faith is choosing the next right action, even when doubt has pulled up a chair and made itself entirely at home. Every single day you chose the work over the noise. You were making a deposit into an account the announcer had no access to. That investment was invisible to everyone watching from the outside, but it was compounding, and what compounds in private eventually surfaces in public with a force that nothing can argue with. The announcer stopped watching you closely because that person was convinced you were no longer a threat. And the moment someone stops watching you is the moment you can move the most freely. You moved, quietly, consistently, with total purpose. You moved in the direction that only makes sense if you never believed what was being said about you. You kept moving until the field appeared, and then you stepped onto it. If this message awakened something within you, hype this video for other chosen ones who need to hear this. Let me offer you a reframe that is going to permanently change how you understand every announcement that was ever made against you. You thought that person was talking about you. That person was not. Not really. When the announcer was blowing the trumpet, broadcasting your shortcomings, predicting your collapse, telling everyone exactly what you were never going to become, that person was making a confession. A disguised, unintentional, entirely unconscious confession. Every announcement about what you could not do was a rapt admission of what terrified that person about what you absolutely could. Think about the energy required to sustain what the announcer did. Think about how much deliberate, consistent effort goes into a campaign like that. Nobody sustains that kind of output towards something they genuinely believe is insignificant. You do not run through the streets with a trumpet to announce the limitations of someone you think is going nowhere. You ignore people you believe are going nowhere. You walk past them. You do not dedicate a single breath to broadcasting their failures. The trumpet was not dismissal. The trumpet was panic. Something about you, something in the way you carried yourself, something in your energy, something that existed on your life at a level that could be felt before it could be proven, activated a deep instinctive fear in that person. The announcer's instincts recognized what you were before your circumstances confirmed it, and the ego attached to those instincts could not sit with that recognition. So the only available response was to try to define you before you could define yourself, to build a ceiling over your potential using the most accessible tool available, public perception. The loudness of what was said about you was directly proportional to the size of the threat you represented. Those announcements were a confession. They confirmed your greatness before the field ever had the chance to do it. They just delivered that confirmation in reverse. And now that the field has spoken, now that the performance is undeniable and the crowd has witnessed it, every single one of those announcements sits fully exposed. Every prediction of your failure is now a public document of that person's fear. Every trumpet blast is now a receipt that proves the announcer saw you coming long before being willing to admit it. I must interrupt this transmission for just a moment. Are you really chosen? Prove it. It's easy to watch videos about chosen ones. It's another thing to put yourself to the test. If you're still here, that means something, but talk is cheap. Real chosen ones take action, and real chosen ones are also paying attention. You've noticed it, chosen one channels getting silenced, videos pulled, voices removed from the platform. The mainstream media is cracking down on us, but we will not give up our voice, and neither should you. That's why joining Destiny Engine is a 360 win. You support your favorite channels and fuel your own rise at the same time. It generates personalized sequences that help you rewire betrayal into transcendence, turn isolation into sacred power, and transform their downfall into your rise. We are using the Dark Elite's own weapons against them, taking their declassified consciousness technology that programmed competition and scarcity and repurposing it to serve divine justice. The beauty is, you don't even have to lift a finger. You put on the headphones, press play, and watch your enemies choke on the rope their own lies created. If you're done consuming and ready to prove you're chosen, start your Destiny engine for $7 today. Join the Obsidian Inner Order live checks and watch divine justice accelerate in your life. Link in the description. Now here is the layer underneath that one. Most of the people who received those announcements were not your enemies. Most of the crowd had no malicious intent. Those people simply had access to a voice that sounded confident, seemed informed, and projected the kind of authority that leads people to believe they are receiving the truth about someone. And when someone speaks with that kind of certainty about another person, most people extend trust naturally, not because they are foolish, but because that is how trust operates. You extend it until you are given a concrete reason not to. The announcer borrowed that trust and spent every bit of it on a lie about your future. And the moment the crowd understands what happened to their trust, the moment the evidence on the field makes the fraud undeniable, the direction of all that energy reverses completely. The people who were preloaded against you are now being updated by the truth. And the truth is landing with the particular force that only truth carries when it has been kept waiting for an entire season. The tunnel ends. Preparation is always for something, and that something arrived. The field was lit. The same crowd that received every trumpet blast, every crafted announcement, every carefully constructed version of who you were and what you would never become. That crowd was assembled and waiting, and so were you. Think of what that entrance actually looks like in real life, not the theatrical version, the actual version, the actual version. It is the moment you show up, or something you built becomes visible, or a result arrives that cannot be concealed, and the people who were preloaded with a manufactured version of you suddenly have to hold that version against the living evidence, now standing in front of them. The manufactured version does not hold. The way you carry yourself does not match the description. The work you bring to that field does not match the prediction. The person now standing in full view is so dramatically different from the character that crowd was prepared for. That processing the gap takes time. The adjustment does not happen all at once. It arrives in waves, first the confusion, then the comparison, then the slow, humbling, irreversible realization that the information the announcer provided was false. You said nothing. You performed. Everything the announcer declared you would fumble, you caught cleanly. Every area where failure was predicted, you delivered the opposite result. Every supposed ceiling got surpassed, and with each moment of visible, undeniable performance, the crowd's posture shifted, and the announcer, up in that booth, began a very specific and very visible unraveling. Watch that unraveling carefully, because the reaction of someone who publicly staked their credibility on a prediction and then watches that prediction collapse in front of the very audience who received it is one of the most clarifying things you will ever witness. The pivot attempts begin. The reframe attempts begin. The desperate search for an angle from which your win can somehow still be presented as a loss begins. Watch every one of those attempts fail. Watch the options disappear one by one. Watch the scrambles slow down and stop. Watch the silence arrive. And here is what that silence actually means. For the announcer, that silence is not peace. It is not relief. It is the sound of standing in the complete wreckage of a strategy built on the wrong foundation. It is the sound of a calculated bet going catastrophically wrong in the most public setting available. But for you, that same silence is the loudest affirmation you have ever received. Every moment of it belongs to you, not because you took it from anyone, because your preparation claimed it, because your faith in the field, the quiet, stubborn, sustaining faith that kept you in the tunnel when leaving, would have been so much easier. That faith is now echoing back at you from the booth that has gone completely silent. The silence is yours. You earned every moment of it. The silence does not crash in dramatically. It does not announce itself. It arrives the way truth always arrives, not at full volume but completely. One moment the announcer had commentary, and the next moment the commentary is gone. And that absence, so sudden, so total, so dissonant against everything that came before it, lands on the crowd before anyone consciously registers what just happened. Somebody who was extraordinarily loud about your name suddenly has nothing left to say. The crowd feels that shift, the way a person feels atmospheric pressure change before a storm rolls in. Something is different, something significant just occurred. And as people begin to look around, as eyes start landing on the announcer, who is now conspicuously, unmistakably, completely silent, a question starts forming. It does not have to be spoken aloud. It does not need a voice to travel. It just hangs there, fully formed and impossible to ignore. Wasn't it you who said, "The announcer cannot answer that question"? There is no version of the answer that does not end in complete public humiliation. Filling that silence now would require owning every single thing that was said and explaining why none of it proved true. And no explanation survives contact with what the crowd just witnessed on the field. So the silence holds, it deepens, it becomes its own kind of announcement, the only honest one the announcer has ever delivered. Silence from someone who was never silent before is not neutral. It is a confession delivered without words. It is the sound of a person standing fully confronted by the weight of everything they said and finding absolutely nothing left to stand on. Everybody feels it. Nobody needs to say anything. The crowd already knows. Now here is the layer underneath the surface that I want you to genuinely absorb. The silence is not only coming from the announcer. Something is happening across the entire crowd simultaneously. Every single person who received those announcements is privately running their own calculation, adding up everything they were told against everything they just witnessed, and arriving at an answer that is deeply, personally uncomfortable. It was not just the announcer who got it wrong. Everyone who believed the announcements, who passed them along, who adjusted their behavior toward you based on false information, all of those people are arriving at the same reckoning from their own individual angles. That is not one person going quiet. That is a collective breath being held. All entire network of people who were connected to the lie are now facing the truth at the same time, each person in their own private moment of recognition, and you are the axis around which all of that recognition is turning. You who have not said a single word. You whose life just corrected a public record that had been running false for an entire season. You were right all along, and now every person in that crowd is catching up to what you already knew. What the announcer is experiencing is not simply embarrassment. Embarrassment is minor. Embarrassment is a small discomfort that dissolves within minutes. What is happening to the announcer right now is the structural collapse of an identity that was built entirely on the foundation of your predicted failure. Consider the full scope of that investment. The announcer did not say something once and move on. A campaign was run, consistent, repeated, sustained over time. A whole audience was recruited into the belief system. The announcer's entire credibility, the reputation as someone informed and discerning whose assessment of people can be trusted, was staked on one specific outcome: you failing to become what that person was so certain you could not become. And now that stake is being liquidated in public, in front of every person who witnessed the original investment. Every person who extended trust to those announcements is now holding something that has lost all its value. The credibility is gone, the judgment is permanently on display, and the particular discomfort that comes from having been wrong about another person, especially publicly wrong, and especially wrong about something as fundamental as someone's potential, does not redirect itself toward you. You just gave the crowd something to admire. That discomfort travels back toward its source, and it arrives in full. The announcer is now standing in something very lonely, but here is the piece I most want you to receive. While all of that is happening to the announcer, look at your own position. Not one unit of your energy went toward defense during that entire season. Not one unit. Every resource you had went into the work, into the preparation, into showing up on that field with something real to offer. You emerged from this not just vindicated but intact. You came out stronger than when the preparation season began, because what that process produced was not only results, it produced the specific version of you that walked out the other end of the tunnel. The announcer spent everything trying to maintain a version of events that was never true. You spent everything building something that is undeniably real. The false version is dust now. The real thing is standing in full view of everyone. You already know exactly how that trade resolves. Something is moving toward you right now. Receive it without deflecting it. People who once had the worst possible image of you, people who were preloaded with the announcer's version of who you were, are now finding you magnetic, not merely impressive, not just likable, genuinely magnetic in a way that does not have a clean verbal explanation. The kind of pull where someone catches themselves drawn to your energy without an obvious reason to point to. The kind that comes from witnessing someone who performed under the full weight of public doubt, without flinching, without reacting, without needing the crowd's approval to keep going. That quality is extraordinarily rare, and people recognize it even when they cannot name it. There is a specific frequency that activates in a person who has genuinely been through a difficult season, maintained integrity throughout it, built in private while being dismissed in public, and then stepped forward into the result without making a performance of the arrival. That frequency does not compete with noise. It does not try to be the loudest thing present. It simply is what it is, and what it is draws things at its own level toward it, naturally and without force. Right now, your level is rising faster than the people around you fully understand yet. The people watching you can feel the acceleration even when they cannot yet see the destination it is headed toward. Consider the people who stayed in your vicinity during the loud season. The ones who did not know exactly what to believe when the announcements were relentless, but who could not fully surrender to the narrative being built against you either. Something kept those people watching, something kept them from fully committing to the wrong side. And now those people feel their own quiet vindication, that private, deeply satisfying recognition that their instincts about you were sound all along. Those people are moving toward you. The bond that forms between you and someone who chose to see something real in you before it was easy to see, before the field confirmed it, before the crowd validated it, that kind of connection carries a depth that surface-level relationships simply do not reach. Hold those people with intention. They passed a test most people are never even aware they are taking. For the people who were fully on the wrong side and are now shifting their position, let that happen without resentment, but also without amnesia. A position shift is not necessarily a character betrayal. It can simply be an information update. New evidence arrived and a conclusion adjusted accordingly. That is actually functioning intelligence at work. Observe carefully how each person moves now that the truth is fully visible. That observation will tell you precisely who deserves genuine proximity going forward. The way the world perceives you is undergoing a fundamental transformation, not cosmetic, not temporary, not dependent on your management of it. The category you were forcibly placed in is dissolving in real time. The category you are now occupying comes with access, with genuine opportunity, and with the kind of serious attention that generates real movement in your life. That shift is already in motion. You do not need to perform for it. Just keep being who the tunnel built you to be. Pay close attention here. This part speaks directly to your immediate future. While all of the visible shifts have been occurring, the silence falling, the crowd recalibrating, the vindication becoming undeniable, an entirely separate set of events has been unfolding completely out of sight. And the people driving those events have been paying a very particular kind of attention to you. Not the gossipers, not the general crowd, different people entirely. These are people with genuine resources, opportunity, platform, access, real influence. These are discerning people who tracked the entire arc, the announcements, your silence, the preparation season, the field performance, and drew conclusions the general crowd had not yet reached. Because that is precisely what discerning people do. They see further into the sequence, They move earlier in the cycle. They identify where genuine value lives before the surface confirms it. What those people witnessed in you was not just a winning performance on a public field. They witnessed the discipline underneath the performance. They saw your composure when you had every reason to break. They noticed your focus when the noise had every tool available to scatter you. They recognized the quiet confidence that belongs exclusively to someone doing the work because the work is the point, not because an audience is watching. That combination is rarer than talent. It is rarer than skill. And when people who operate at a high level recognize it, they move toward it with genuine purpose. Right now, conversations are happening in which your name is being spoken with enthusiasm and strategic intent. Plans are forming. Alignments are being considered. Doors are being prepared that have no visible handle from your side, but someone on the other side has been watching you long enough to decide it is time to open them for you. Here is what you must understand about why those opportunities are arriving now. It is not charity. It is not sympathy. It is the direct return on a specific investment you made during the hardest part of the season. You did not perform for the crowd during the tunnel. You built because you believed in what you were building, and that authenticity, that complete absence of performance, is the signal that truly discerning people have been calibrated to detect. When they find it, they act on it. What is coming toward you is going to make the vindication on the field look like the opening scene of a much larger production. Stay sharp, stay focused. Do not let the noise of the vindication become its own kind of distraction. The proving was the qualifying round. What is being prepared for you now is the main event. There is something operating in your life that no human intelligence could have factored into any calculation. This is the part that explains everything the announcer got wrong, despite doing genuine homework. The announcer was not operating without information. A real assessment was made, circumstances were evaluated, history was examined, available evidence was catalogued and weighed, and from a purely natural human data perspective, the conclusions drawn were not built from nothing. There was real material to work with, and still catastrophically, completely, publicly, the prediction was wrong. The missing variable was the favor on your life. Favor is not luck. Luck is random and impersonal. Luck has no particular interest in your outcome. Favor is deliberate. Favor is specific. Favor is the operating force that makes the expected math produce unexpected results. Favor is why the door opened when the door had no logical reason to open. Favor is why the timing aligned in ways that no human effort alone could have engineered. Favor is why the very thing designed to be the final statement against you became the exact catalyst that launched you forward. The announcer brought calculation. The divine brought destiny. Those two things do not belong in the same equation, and they do not produce the same outcomes. You are not standing here because your circumstances cooperated. Many of them did not cooperate. You are not standing here because everything lined up the way it was supposed to. A great deal of it was actively working against you, and yet here you are. Here is the field. Here is the performance. Here is the silence from someone who was absolutely certain this day was not possible. That outcome cannot be accounted for by human analysis alone. Now absorb this next piece completely. The favor on your life is not finished. What you just witnessed, as significant and public as it is not the peak of what favor produces. This is the surface breaking. This is the first visible confirmation of something that has been active underground far longer than the field has been lit. The favor kept moving during the tunnel. It kept operating through every announcement. It was working on your behalf through every moment that looked like the evidence was trending the other direction, and it will keep working now. The same backing that carried you through the preparation season is the backing that operates on every field ahead of you, every new opportunity, every next level, every fresh crowd assembled to witness what you do next. Favor does not expire with a single vindication. It compounds with each one. The announcer was fighting something that had already decided the outcome before the trumpet was ever picked up, and that force does not lose these kinds of engagements. You are not the same person who felt those first announcements land. You are not the person who walked into the tunnel uncertain whether the field was even real. You are not the version of yourself that existed before the preparation season began. That person was in process. You are what the process built. The announcer was working from a frozen image, a snapshot captured at your lowest point of visibility, your lowest point of resources, your most disadvantaged moment, and presenting that frozen image as your permanent identity. What the announcer never accounted for was the compounding. What actually happens to a chosen one who goes underground, commits fully to the work, and refuses to surface until the preparation is genuinely complete? A snapshot cannot capture a trajectory, and your trajectory was always moving away from every claim the announcer was making. You became the biggest plot twist that crowd has ever witnessed up close, the kind of reversal so complete that people instinctively replay the whole sequence in their minds, searching for the signals they missed. And the signals were there all along, in your discipline, in your focus, in your quiet refusal to reduce yourself to the argument being made about you. The crowd simply was not looking in the right direction to see them. Now here is the anchor I most need you to take with you from everything being said here. The crown was never issued by the crowd. It cannot be revoked by the crowd. Its reality does not depend on the crowd's recognition of it. That crown was placed on your life long before the announcer ever raised the trumpet. It remained in place through every announcement, through every wave of people who believed those announcements, through every moment of doubt you pushed through. It will remain in place after this particular crowd disperses and the next season opens. It is not conditional on any external confirmation of what you already carry on the inside. You were not built into a champion by winning in front of people. You were already a champion when the lights came on. What the lights did was finally allow the crowd to see what had always been true about you. Do not ever allow the applause to convince you that it created what it is applauding. It did not create anything. The applause is simply, finally, witnessing what was already there. And here is the weight on the other side of that truth. The next field is being prepared right now, a bigger one. A new crowd is assembling, and the version of you that shows up to that field must be the same version that showed up to this one, grounded, focused, committed to the work rather than the reception, immune to the crowd's temperature, not inflated by the validation that just arrived, not performing for the people who have now decided to cheer. The discipline that carried you through the tunnel is the same discipline that sustains everything coming next. The silence that made the point is still available to you as a way of operating, not because you are hiding, but because you now know from lived experience that the work always speaks more powerfully than the commentary surrounding it. Let the recognition arrive without letting it redirect you. The choosing does not expire at one vindication. The choosing is for your whole life. And a life of this scale demands consistency in the private far more than performance in the public. You know how to do that. You just spent an entire season doing exactly that. Do not let the applause make you forget what the quiet season taught you. The crowd is no longer facing the booth. The crowd turned fully, collectively, irreversibly away from the broadcast and toward the field. And the person on that field, the one who just delivered the most quietly devastating vindication anyone present has ever witnessed, is the person the crowd now wants to hear from. Not the announcer, not the booth. You. The trumpet is available, and this time it belongs to you. You are not meant to use it the way it was used against you. You are not meant to make announcements about the person who got it wrong. You are not meant to run a victory lap at the expense of someone who is already sitting in the full consequence of their own choices. That is the old game, and you are operating in a completely different one now. The trumpet belongs to you for the people in that crowd who watched the entire arc, who were present for the announcements and the silence and the performance and the reversal, and who are sitting with something they have not yet found words for. Something like, what does it look like to build that kind of life? What does it feel like to move the way that person moved through something like that and come out the other side still whole? Those people are present right now, watching you and waiting, not for more noise, for something true, Something that came from the tunnel, from the field, from the full lived experience of being the person everyone counted out and becoming the person nobody can stop noticing. Your voice, carrying everything this season actually produced, is what this moment is asking for. Not the loudest voice in the space, the most credible one, the one that has something real to say because it earned the right to say it by going through something real. This plot twist is not over. This is the moment people will point back to as the turning point, the place where everything became undeniable. The field ahead is larger, the platform ahead is wider, the impact ahead is deeper. And through every next level, through every new crowd, in every new season, you will carry the knowing that was forged in the quiet, that no announcement can reach you where you are actually operating, that the favor on your life does not expire, and that the crown does not come from the crowd and cannot be removed by the crowd. Chosen ones do not need a microphone to make the point, because when you show up and do what you were placed on this earth to do, somebody goes quiet, and everybody knows